tastes like fire.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on the Celeste Williams for Arkansas page. I'm Stephanie Baker, and I'll be moderating this discussion this evening with our wonderful guests. We have with us Celeste Williams, family nurse practitioner running for Congress right here in District 3, and Raj Suresh, who has asked me to introduce him as Bentonville's favorite Indian. Tonight, we're going to have a very personal discussion about compassionate immigration reform. And I'm sure you guys have heard us say this before if you've watched the page at all, but our entire team believes that politics is really personal, and it affects every facet of our lives. So we'd like to put a real face and real story to this topic of immigration reform. So we're going to jump right in tonight, get right into it. If you guys have any questions for us, for Celeste or for Raj, drop them in the comments and I will ask them those questions as we have time. So Raj, I'm going to start with you. I know that immigration reform is deeply personal for you, and I've seen you share Facebook posts about your experience in the past. Do you mind sharing with our viewers your personal experience?
Yeah, so sure. I've been in the United States for 12 years at this point. I came here for college, and I've stayed ever since. And that's how you know immigrating to the United States is tough, because when I came here, I had a full head of hair. And now I look like this. So it's been 12 years of living in 5 or 6 different cities in the US, everywhere from like Dallas to New York to Cleveland, and my favorite place in America, Bentonville, Arkansas. What else? It's a very long, arduous, exhausting amount of paperwork that you have to get through. And 12 years later, I don't think most people could tell you that I wasn't American. At least if they listen to me, I don't think they'd know off the bat. So yeah, it's been a super interesting, like very long-winded journey coming to America. It started out rough. I was on a boat with a tiger. I'm just kidding. That's Life of Pi. But I flew over here on some kind of aircraft and landed in Detroit, and I thought that that was America. And yeah, went to school in Pennsylvania right after that. So it's been a fun couple of years.
What brought you to Bentonville?
Mostly the money. Just kidding. I don't know. I came here for a job, and then I stayed because I have a bunch of friends down here, and yeah, life is affordable and cheap and plenty of space, and there's a lot to love about this place. As much as it seems like, so when I came here, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, and the town has changed so rapidly in such a short amount of time that I don't know. I think I was part of that initial wave of Indians that decided to take over the southwest part of the city. So now we are here, and we're a relatively large force at 10% of the city's population to be reckoned with. And yeah. So again, mostly the money.
What are you drinking tonight?
This is juice. I'm just kidding. It's Kentucky rye whiskey.
All right. So where are you in your process to citizenship?
Yeah, so I'm in line for my green card, which will be, I've been in line since 2000. I started the process of all this paperwork at some point in 2007. Got my initial entry visa to the US in 2008. And then I started the formal process to become a citizen right after I graduated. So about 2011, 2012. So I've been in line since then. So it's been quite a while, about 9 years in line. I've got roughly anywhere between 10 and 15 years. It's a moving target to get my green card. And then 5 years after that, I'll be eligible to apply for citizenship. And so long story short, the way I live my life, chances are I'll be dead before I become an American.
So thank you for sharing with us, Raj. Celeste, after hearing what Raj has to say about this, what are your immediate thoughts? What's your reaction?
So I think it's super sad that it's like that long of being in line. Certainly immigration is important to me. My father-in-law immigrated from Brazil and came to the United States when he was like 19 years old. My brother-in-law, yes, he is. Oh. He is. Which, that 7% cap from each country, there's not quite as many people immigrating from Brazil as there were from India. And, he was able to get that. he's probably one of the most patriotic people that I know. Um, but my brother-in-law also came to the United States, which he immigrated from England. So way smaller country, fewer number of people immigrating from there. And so he has his green card already. And of course, the way he got to come was he married my sister and they have children. And so as a close family member, he was able to immigrate to the US. And I do think, there's certainly so much loud rhetoric about people getting in line and doing it legally. And, for a lot of people, there isn't a line. There's certainly not a line. There are lots of lines. And, certainly coworkers of mine who are highly skilled, highly trained physicians who are trying to get citizenship, have been educated here, working here, and there's a huge number of physicians who are serving communities primarily of rural, underserved areas, and really doing great work that is certainly very needed in rural communities. And they don't have a way to become permanent citizens or legal or get their citizenship. So, when I talk to my friend at work and I've asked him what he plans to do, he said his estimate is that it's probably 26 years at least until he is able to become a citizen. And so since he and his wife have children who are US citizens, they will do as Donald Trump did and use a family member or Donald Trump's wife was able to, his in-laws came on a family visa. And so, that is the primary way that most people immigrate to the country, is with those family ways or visa. And I think that's probably one of the better ways to do it, because one, who wants to separate families? And two, you have a built-in support system when you get to the country and a network to help you navigate.
Thanks, Celeste. Raj, I'm going to ask you a question that's going to put you kind of in the position of a policymaker. I'm just curious, if you could pick 3 immediate immigration reforms that you could see happen, what 3 would you most like to see happen, and which would be the most impactful for you personally?
Yeah, so I think the first is I want people like me to have first dibs on casting for the next season, the 90 Day Fiancé. So that if there is anyone out there in America that is very attracted to Indian men, I'm right here. Gotta find me an anchor wife. I'm kidding. I honestly think the first thing we need to do is change the first of all, Celeste, very impressed that you know about the cap exemptions. Most people don't know what that is. So I'll give 10 seconds of background. Every single country in the world is given the same number of visas to come to the United States. It's a foolish policy. It attempts to say that everything is fair chance and that we're creating this racially diverse utopia. It's not really true. 85% of America, or whatever the number is, I think at least 60% of America is already white. So trying to if you really want to create a racially diverse society, you should probably ban European immigration for a little while. So I think cap exemptions need to go away, and they need to be proportionally focused, which means that if a country has, say, 1.5 billion people, maybe don't give them the same 8% of visas that you offer to a country that has maybe 300,000 people. It's not really, so that would be my first move. I think the second move, and I have seen this pitched from both sides. So I've seen the Republicans pitch this. I've seen versions of it pitched by Democrats. I think there needs to be nuance around it, but merit-based immigration, I think, has a path forward. I've got to be real careful and check my privilege as a person that managed to be born to the right people, to have the right education, to earn what you would call merit points to come here on a system like that. So I think those would be the sort of big 2 or 3 for me. And if there really is a fourth, I think it begins by educating the American populace on what legal immigration really looks like, why it's longer for some people, why it's shorter for other people. And I'll say that this process of legal immigration has been harangued by both parties. in the last 3 to 5 years, it's not just been Republicans pushing back on stuff. It's not just like Stephen Miller and his group of folks. There's also folks like Democrats in California were the last ones to pass more restrictive H-1B laws. So the H-1B is a work visa. I think the biggest difficulty I wrestle with is the fact that this becomes a popular topic every 4 years, and then for the other 3, we sort of languish. And so I'm very careful to treat one party like it's worse than the other when it comes to immigration, because it's hard, right? You've got arguably the right passing laws that make it harder for legal immigrants to enter the country. You've got the left, which has a history of drone bombing children in Pakistan. So it's really hard to feel loved by either camp.
Yeah, for sure. That was actually my next question for you, because I've heard you say often that both parties have failed when it comes to immigration. Is there anything else you want to say about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot I could say. I just think that both parties tend to fail on a lot of things. It's not just immigration. It's honestly, I don't understand the grandstanding. It feels like the American public is generally being shortchanged by a two-party system where the third party never wins, and the two parties that are running still somehow manage to remain friends after they turn us all into enemies of each other. I got a ton of friends that support Trump. I've got a ton of friends that are staunch Democrats. I would call myself left-leaning on almost every single issue. I think the only area I'm a little more right-leaning is just as somebody that engages in a performance art of some kind. I think freedom of speech is something that I do lean a little more right on, primarily because discussions like this are so paramount, right? We need to be able to say things that the other party disagrees with specific lines in the sand, right? So there are longstanding areas where I personally just won't go. I won't resort to calling people certain words or names. Like I don't think that falls under speech that you can expect people to react to in a calm or rational manner at any given time. And that's just owing to this country's history. But by and large, we have forgotten how to discourse and dialogue in America. We don't know how to sit down at the table. We don't know how to not mudsling. I understand that we are in a tumultuous time where that is a very hard thing to ask of somebody, to not mudsling. I would also wish that this is a time where someone would really just, fall on their sword for the Democratic Party and say some wild stuff at a debate to Donald Trump, just bring up his past, go hard at it. But it's a little bit hard when one guy's a turkey vulture and the other one looks like a lizard.
I'm not even going to ask who's who.
Pick either one. It's fine.
I do want to just acknowledge that, I do think that probably both sides of politics, and I think a lot of the people who are in office right now have really found wedge issues to divide us as a country, and immigration seems to be one of those things that I can remember things that the Republicans did that there's no way they would do now. And I think that at the end of the day, like, we all want basically the same things. And I think that this consistent demagoguery is incredibly dangerous. I think that it increases our, it hurts our democracy. And, we're all living in the United States, and we want to have a really good life and good opportunities for everyone, and dividing people against one another and making immigration such a wedge issue as it has become doesn't really benefit anybody, and really demonizes a group of people. And I think that every human being has inherent value and should be treated with dignity. And certainly, screaming about how terrible Republicans are, or, some of the terrible things that our president has said, that doesn't serve anyone other than just to divide us against one another. And I think that we're better than that.
Thank you, Celeste. I want to remind our viewers that if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments. I'm monitoring the comments here, and I'll relay your questions to either Celeste or Raj. And Celeste, I want to ask you, when you're elected and you're our Congresswoman, what would be one of the first things you would want to work towards to fix our broken immigration system?
There's a long list, but one of the things that I do think is really important is to address DACA recipients and to make sure that they actually have a path to citizenship, which they do not right now. Again, I do not want to separate families, and I think that their parents should be able to get legal residency as well. I think that we have a humanitarian crisis on our southern border. I do not believe that we should be separating children from their parents. And I have said before, as someone who is a former foster parent and adoptive mom, that those that has permanent repercussions on those children. And I think that it is morally reprehensible if we cannot at least agree that it is terrible policy to ever do that, then there's something wrong with us. I think it's quite an indictment on us as human beings. I think that we need to have, certainly it is a legal right for someone to seek asylum. Human migration has been happening since the dawn of man. And more often than not, it is occurring because of a crisis. Climate change is contributing to that, with more flooding and fires and famine and things like that. And people want a safe place to live. And I can certainly say that if I didn't have opportunities for me or my children, or I feared for our safety, I would walk to Canada if I needed to for safety and opportunity. But back to your question,
Why don't you walk to Mexico? It's wonderful down there.
I could. I would love. I've been to Mexico. The beach was lovely. Or walk to Brazil, where my in-laws' family lives. But COVID's pretty bad there right now too, as it is here. But I would love to see more judges for asylum seekers. If we are going to detain people, which I would argue we should not be doing that, then they have to have safe and sanitary conditions in which we're keeping them.
Absolutely.
So there's a start.
Raj, do you have any questions for Celeste as a candidate for Congress?
I think, honestly, I don't know. I get confused a lot by the position immigrants are starting to play in America, right? We've generally been a culture that sort of keeps your head down, stay out the way, work really hard, things will pan out. I don't like feeling like a pawn in the process to either party, because I just know that raises the stakes for one of them to really help us and one of them to really hurt us. And depending on the year, Trump brought out 5 immigrants like it was Captain Planet at the last RNC, and he was like naturalizing. I didn't understand what that was about. It was the strangest display of so-called compassion I've ever seen. Same thing goes for the left, by the way, where it's like, okay, it's just hard for me to believe that people on both sides have utilized immigrants for relatively cheap labor in every facet. In my culture's case, usually IT, right? And you have owners of companies that are Democrats and Republicans all profiting off of this sort of dirty industry secret that seems to exist. I think the biggest question I'd have is, how do you ensure that past getting elected and past having laws that you're trying to enact fail? How do you keep the emphasis to keep this communal uptrend happening for us, so that we don't feel like we're like the pretty girl when it comes to the prom and then forgotten about the rest of the year?
I think that one, I have to continue to have that core moral compass of that all human beings should be treated with dignity, and that you have value no matter who you are or where you came from. And really, I think those are traditionally American values, but it is also takes a community holding me accountable, because I do believe that power certainly can corrupt. And I have to maintain a relationship with the people that I am representing, and they have to hold me accountable to make sure that I continue to do the right thing. And if I quit showing up to a community, then don't vote for me. I think that the democracy requires relationship. And, if I'm not treating someone fairly and not paying attention to them, then I don't deserve their vote.
How do you reconcile that in a state that is so red, right? Like, how do you go for the win here? How do you not mudsling or say something bad about, Womack or the Republican Party and still make your point in a time of identity politics?
So I just think that
And it's
people
all
are
right to say
tired
that
of
you
it.
need to do those things, because if I were you,
think
I
it's
definitely
fine.
would.
Well, that's fine. I think that it is appropriate for me to hold Steve Womack accountable for the things that he has done as an elected official. I think 287G is terrible. I think voting to repeal the Affordable Care Act over 54 times is terrible. Those are things that I vehemently disagree with him on, but I also don't think that it is right to try to say terrible things about him as a human being and as a person. Certainly, I think that I would do a better job than him. And I think that he's said some really disrespectful, terrible things to his constituents. But I don't think that that's, that has nothing to do with why I'm running. Like, I'm running for office because I see too many of my patients in my practice who are struggling to afford healthcare, who can't afford their prescription medications, worried about sending their kids to college, can't find affordable childcare for their preschoolers. Those are all much bigger problems, or that they can't get good paying jobs and they're stuck in a low wage job that forces them to rely on food assistance and Medicaid for their health care. And I think his policies create a lot of those problems. And if they haven't created it, he's not doing anything to fix it. He's been there for 10 years and he's never, ever done anything to address those issues. And I think it's talking about the policy. And I'm not running to just represent Democrats. Like, I am a Democrat. That is my personal bias. But I also love my Republican friends, and they want most of the same things that I want too. And I think that you have to have people who are willing to serve everyone in their district, not just the people who voted for them.
For sure. Raj, do you have any more questions for Celeste?
I admit I'm an idealist.
No, I just like to say thank you for having me on, for engaging in the discussion, especially while I've just been really sitting here drinking scotch. I did read that you had 2 peacocks. I've heard that they're very temperamental birds. I don't know what prompted that decision, but peacocks are very. Oh yeah, you decided that was the animal of choice.
They have several animals.
He's quirky.
Raj. They have a bit of a farm there.
No, I read all of them, but the peacocks was the interesting one. It's Arkansas, so rabbits and ducks are relatively available, but a peacock, you got to import one of those.
Yes, that would be my lovely husband.
Yeah, no other questions per se. I tried to keep it as balanced as possible. As soon as November passes, I don't know what December looks like for a lot of us, right? So
yeah,
throwing my lot in with any one party has never served me or the people that I belong to very well. So I
think our connection might be waning.
Aww. That's such a bummer.
I know. I'm trying to see if I can fix it, but it's not on my end. I'm going to text Raj and tell him to reconnect. Let's see. That's it. I don't think I've heard it do that before.
No.
Celeste, I'm going to go to some viewer questions on here. And this was something that Raj kind of alluded to. Hey, Raj, are you back with us? He may be coming. So the question from a viewer, and I'll ask you this one since it's not really related to immigration before Raj joins back, but one of the viewers was asking if you have any tips for a young person running for state rep in the age of COVID.
Oh, running in the age of COVID, get really good volunteers. I think that you can reach voters in a safe way that isn't in person, which would be making phone calls, doing social media. You can do mailers and those types of things. So I certainly think, I don't think door knocking is safe right now. So wear a mask if you're out and about, wash your hands, watch your distance, the usuals. But as far as campaigning, it's getting creative and thinking outside the box and really utilizing all the resources of friends and family and volunteers that you can harness to reach people.
Hey, Raj.
You're back, Raj.
You're
I
back.
can hear you again.
Yay.
I was saying nice things and the internet.
Oh,
Bummer. We missed the nice things.
I was just saying that I hope that if you win, no matter who wins, that you guys remember us when you get into office. I feel like a parent sending a child off to college. just yeah. I don't know. This is what we're like, you know. Some of us are great doctors and stuff, and then some of us are boozy alcoholics trying to ride out of quarantine.
And every single one has value.
Yes.
Okay, another question from a viewer that I wanted both of you to hear. And Raj, you alluded to this earlier, but this commenter says one of the biggest things that they think needs to happen is clear education to voters about what immigration is, who immigrants are, what is legal form of immigration. Is that something that you guys see an issue with in the community? Do people not understand the process?
It's hard in a country where people still call Native Americans Indians and don't know why. Like, I think we need to address some very long-standing grievances before we start talking about people like me. Like, I understand that everyone has a struggle and that it's important. I think that if you don't address the bedrock issues that exist within.
Hey, Raj, you're breaking up again. Do you think maybe if you turn your video off, we could hear you better? Do you want to try that?
Try that.
Sometimes that'll help if it doesn't need that much.
Video.
Yeah.
There, now we can hear. Great.
Yeah, much better. Sorry.
You know what it was? I had my Wi-Fi turned off, so I've just been burnt data this whole time.
No.
Not a very good Indian. So I think there's some long-standing grievances, and I wish that we could address those, because it creates opportunities for us to understand where people's grief comes from, where people act in ways that other communities don't understand. The BLM movement, for me, for example, right? Like, I went to a BLM protest in New York. By and large, no trouble, supremely well organized, relatively diverse, lots of different and unique voices. And yet all I see in the news is just this very one-sided sort of deal. Look, the Bentonville Square has this Confederate statue on it. That was a big deal for a long period of time.
Not anymore.
It doesn't anymore, but I know that it riled up a lot of feelings because people feel like their history is attached to it. It's been moved to a different place. I guarantee you, maybe 1% of the people that complained about it online will actually go and visit it where it's been relocated to. I just think there needs to be a ton of education that occurs between now and whenever we fix legal immigration, because what happens more often than you guys, I think, see or hear as people that are not immigrants, is people will come up to me and ask me to basically be mad at illegal or undocumented immigrants. And they basically go, hey, they're cutting you in line, shouldn't you be mad? No, I'm not mad. I'm not mad because this line is 160 years long. So it doesn't matter. I'm probably going to die waiting. So why would I be mad at the next guy when the whole system is broken? When we talk about educating people on what immigrants look like, I think this is maybe where the internet serves a tiny amount of good in a world full of like trolls and Twitter and all of that, right? Like, you're watching me live, you know I'm a real person, you know that I sound just like you. I live in this country, speak English just because everybody here speaks English. And I do a dozen things just to assimilate with a society that abjectly rejects my presence and the presence of people like me in a very legal format. So I'm doing everything legally, and it's legally just as difficult, and no one's trying to fix that for me. They just want me to be mad at other people for that.
Which again, creating that division, who does that serve? Like it serves a tiny group of people who are then kept in power by dividing us against one another.
Yes, turkey vultures and lizards. So serious.
Turkey vultures. That's a new one. Celeste, do you have a turkey? I don't think there's a turkey there.
We used to have a turkey.
Oh no, I don't want to ask what happened to the turkey.
Thanksgiving happened.
Nature.
You know who would have saved that turkey? President Trump. He would have pardoned it. He would have pardoned that turkey right when it came time.
Oh goodness.
I don't everyone loves turkey. I don't know if it was a raccoon or some
I didn't even know they could
creature.
attack things that big.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Strange.
We had a raccoon dragging one of the ducks out by its neck one time, and which fortunately it was right as someone went to go close the coop.
You can't
and
even let
it
your child
scurried
play
away.
in the yard in this country. Smaller than smaller.
Yeah, you do. I send them out.
Celeste is a free range parent. Okay, those were all of the prepared questions that I had. One thing that I just wanted to emphasize to our viewers, something that Celeste has talked a lot about tonight, and in the past, if you review our immigration policy on our website, that when it comes to immigration, it's not a conversation that needs to be polarized. There are a lot of things that we can all agree on. And if we're going to make progress on anything, we have to find those areas where we agree. And I think a good place to start, as Celeste said, in recognizing inherent value in each person and recognizing that however a person comes to this country, whether it's crossing the border to seek asylum or going through a boat with a tiger, that none of that erases their inherent humanity. And I think if we can start from that place, that's the best place to build our immigration policy in a compassionate and fair way. We have a couple other questions on here. I apologize, Raj, these are not immigration related, but I'm going to go ahead and ask them since somebody wanted to address these. Celeste, this question is about job creation and wage stagnation in Arkansas, and they want to know what your plan is to increase high quality jobs or wages.
So one, I applaud the citizens of Arkansas for passing a minimum wage increase. So I think that's a good first start. That's weird. My light just went out. It startled me.
You still look incredible, Celeste. You got this.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Even in the dark. Maybe it's probably so.
Oh, hold on, Celeste. Your volume went away.
I think her
No,
whole
my-
time went
Yep, you're back. You're good.
My earbuds went away too. That's so weird. I
That's
don't
so
know what's
weird.
happening. So I also think, let's see if I can problem shoot and talk at the same time. So I also think that there's a huge opportunity in Arkansas to really increase good paying jobs and also address climate change, which I think is a really terrible problem. I grew up in a really small rural community, and a lot of people in rural towns move so that they can have better economic opportunities. And I think that we should invest in rural areas, things like wind or solar. Arkansas is a great state for solar energy. So I think that's certainly an area that I would like to sort of incentivize. Northwest Arkansas is a different kind of place. We have tremendous job opportunities, but at the same time, we still have 1 in 5 who have food insecurity, even here in Benton County. And so I think that there are lots of ways to improve everyone's quality of life. And I think that the way that you eradicate poverty is to have a healthy, well-educated populace. And so, everyone needs to have access to healthcare so that they can be as healthy as possible and be able to be well enough to work. We need to and just I'll back up a little bit. I think of a lady I talked to whose son had epilepsy, and he wasn't able to afford his seizure medication, couldn't get in to see a doctor. And so he wasn't able to work because he kept having these seizures. And of course, you also, if you have seizures, then you can't get a driver's license so that you don't have a seizure while you're behind the wheel and accidentally harm someone. And so when the Affordable Care Act was passed, he was able to get an appointment, see a physician, get on his medication, and he's gainfully employed now. And so I think, those are certainly investing and making sure that he was able to get health care made him able to work. So now he's working, he's paying his taxes, and he's adding to our tax base so that we can reinvest in the community and everyone has more opportunity. We have to have, I think that, there's certainly a huge problem with preschool teachers having terrible pay. And, they should be lifted up as well. I'd like to see at least a $15 minimum wage. And that then allows them to be able to, we also need to have them getting affordable health care. They're less likely to need any kind of assistance. Like I think of some preschool teachers that are my patients who, they got a few cent an hour pay raise, and then their health insurance went up $300 a month, which left them even less in their pocket every month than what they'd had before. And I think it's just really making sure that we're investing taxpayer money back into our communities, and not just Northwest Arkansas, like other places as well, who would really benefit in investment in their community.
For sure. We are actually past our allotted time for this town hall, and I promised Raj at the beginning that we always stop right around 30 minutes, and we didn't tonight. We just kept talking, didn't we? So Raj, I'm going to give you a chance to say goodnight to everyone and have any final thoughts before we go.
First, I think that you're cutting it off because you didn't get the Zoom premium version, so it cuts off at 45 minutes.
Actually, we do have the premium, or we wouldn't be broadcasting live.
This is a loaded campaign. Where's the money coming from? $15 a month.
That was actually, shout out to the Democratic women of Washington County. They gifted us this premium account, so thank you guys.
Yeah. Final thoughts. I guess, thank you to you guys for having me on. I hope the Womack campaign does the same thing so that I can say insulting things to them as well. I don't really like either party, but I like certain people and I like their policies. And I really am, despite everything, trying to be optimistic about the future. I think my hopes for the future also include a better immigration system. Reforms that you suggested really do sort of make sense. I would like for people that do yoga to stop saying the word namaste incorrectly. They say namaste. They say it at the end of the class. It has more to do with hello than it does goodbye. And I think that, I'd like a United States where someday if I have a kid, he or she could become the president. And the way things are going, my child will probably be the president of India and then take over the United States. We don't know where the country is headed. It's just in a rough state of time. Yeah. So I appreciate all the conversation and the dialogue. I wish we could have done it in Hindi, but I have to speak English because we're here. So thank you for having me on. Good luck with the Peacocks. Good luck with the campaign. You seem like a very energetic, very kind person, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much for being on and taking the time to do this with us. And thank you.
Anytime.
Celeste, do you have any other closing thoughts for our viewers before we go?
I will just close with, you mentioned hope, and sometimes it is hard to have hope for the future. And I do think that certainly hope is an action. And, when we look around us and we see, our neighbors with COVID, we see people losing their jobs, and then we see our elected officials dividing us as a nation and pitting us against one another. It sometimes makes it a little hard to have hope. And I think that we as individuals can always choose to do things differently. And, I think that I will put my hope in an action, and I will work as hard as I can to make sure that I get elected so that I can really fight for the people in my community so that nobody goes broke because they get sick, that we have a world-class education system and workers in America are paid a fair wage. And we have representatives who value democracy and human beings.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you to all of our viewers for joining us tonight. You can join Celeste next Thursday for her much less formal, very intimate Firefly chat. And then the following Thursday, October 17th, will be our next virtual town hall. Our guest for that one will be Republican State Representative Dan Douglas from Arkansas District 91. And they will talk about bipartisanship. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Good night.